Just wait, you'll lose your job, Marcus Chen said, his voice calm and sharp, his eyes fixed on flight attendant Sarah Mitchell as she asked him to leave first-class seat 1A. The black man in the navy sweater stood his ground, briefcase at his feet, while his supervisor Karen Lee barked, "You better get out of here." Tension filled Gate 17. Phones were recording, the live stream was spiking. When Marcus handed Karen his business card, her face paled. "Marcus Chen, CEO of Chen Enterprises," he announced, which owned 25% of Atlantic Airways. The crowd gasped. How could one man start a global movement? Stay to find out. Sign up to receive our latest stories and commentary. Where are you watching? Will Marcus prevail, or will the airline crush him? Share this now and reveal a twist that will shock you. The cabin of Atlantic Airways Flight 522 to San Francisco hummed with the low buzz of anticipation. Passengers shuffled through the narrow aisle, stowing carry-ons and exchanging polite smiles, while the scent of jet fuel and overpriced coffee lingered in the air. In seat 1A, first class, Marcus Chen settled in, his navy sweater slightly rumpled from a long day. His khakis bore faint creases, and a worn leather satchel rested at his feet, its edges scuffed from years of travel. A black man in his early 40s, Marcus exuded quiet confidence, his dark eyes scanning emails on his phone with practiced focus. To the casual observer, he was just another traveler, unremarkable, unassuming. But the storm brewing at Gate 17 was about to prove otherwise. The first ripple came with a sharp voice cutting through the cabin's hum. "Sir, this section is reserved for first-class passengers. You need to move to the economy." Sarah Mitchell, a flight attendant with a crisp uniform and a tablet clutched like a shield, stood over Marcus. Her blonde ponytail swayed as she tilted her head, her tone laced with authority and a hint of disdain. Heads turned. A businessman in 2A paused mid-sip of his sparkling water. A woman in the 3C adjusted her glasses, her curiosity piqued. Marcus looked up, his expression calm, but his eyes narrowing slightly, catching the weight of Sarah's words. "I'm in the right seat," he said evenly, his voice low but firm. "First class, 1A." Sarah's lips pursed, her fingers tightening around her tablet. "That's impossible," she snapped, her voice loud enough to draw more eyes. "Let me see your ID." The cabin seemed to hold its breath. In seat 2B, a young man named Thomas, his phone already out, sensed the moment's gravity. His fingers danced across the screen, launching a Twitter post. "Black man in first class being harassed on Atlantic Airways. This is wild. Chakras, Flight 552. The tweet pulsed into the digital ether, gaining 30 retweets in under a minute. Marcus, unfazed, reached into his satchel and produced his boarding pass, holding it up for Sarah to see. The bold print of 1A, first class, gleamed under the cabin's fluorescent lights. "Here it is," he said, his tone measured, inviting no argument. Sarah snatched the boarding pass, her eyes scanning it as if it were a forged dollar bill. She tapped her tablet furiously, her brow furrowing. "This has to be a mistake," she muttered, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. The businessman in 2A leaned forward, his voice dripping with condescension. "Just go to your real seat, man. Don't make a scene." The words stung, but Marcus's face remained a mask of composure, though his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Thomas's phone was now recording, the red dot blinking as he captured every word. His Twitter feed buzzed with replies. "This is insane. Why won't they check his ticket?" The hashtag Josh Atlantic discrimination began to ripple across the platform, a digital spark threatening to ignite. Sarah's colleague, Tom, a lanky flight attendant, with a nervous smile, approached from the galley. "Is there a mix-up?" he whispered, but his voice carried to the first-class cabin. Sarah shook her head, her tone sharp. "He's in the wrong seat. Probably booked economy and thought he could sneak up here." The accusation hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. Passengers shifted uncomfortably, some craning their necks, others pretending to ignore the scene. Marcus leaned back slightly, his fingers brushing the armrest. "Please check your system," he said, his voice steady but now carrying a quiet edge. "I booked this seat a month ago." He pulled out his phone, opened the Airline app, and displayed the digital boarding pass, the screen glowing with the same undeniable truth. Seat 1A, first class. The woman in 3C, Dr. Elena, a petite figure with sharp eyes, couldn't stay silent. He's shown you his boarding pass, she said, her voice calm but firm. Why aren't you checking it? Sarah's head snapped toward her. Ma'am, please stay out of this, she said, her tone curt. He booked economy and is trying to scam an upgrade. The word scam landed like a slap, and a murmur rippled through the cabin. Thomas's live stream was gaining traction, now at 200 viewers, with comments flooding in. This is racial profiling. Record everything. Marcus's gaze flickered to Sarah, then to the growing audience. But he remained seated, his posture relaxed yet resolute, a man who knew the weight of the moment. Sarah's fingers flew across her tablet, her frown deepening. Sir, our records show you purchased an economy ticket, she declared, her voice rising with conviction. You'll need to move to coach now. Marcus's eyes met hers unflinching. That's incorrect, he said, his voice still quiet but now laced with steel. He reached into his satchel again, retrieving a platinum frequent flyer card, its metallic sheen catching the light. 420,000 miles flown with Atlantic Airways, he said, placing it on the tray table. Platinum status for 7 consecutive years. The card sat there, a silent testament to his loyalty, but Sarah barely glanced at it. Anyone can print those online, she scoffed, her words dripping with dismissal. Gather your things and move, or I'll call security. The cabin's tension spiked. Thomas's live stream hit 500 viewers, and his Twitter post has now been retweeted 100 times. He showed a platinum card, and they're still humiliating him. Atlantic discrimination, he typed, his fingers trembling with outrage. Dr. Elena shook her head, her phone now recording too. The businessman in 2A muttered, Just take your seat and coach, buddy. You're holding us up. But Marcus didn't budge. His satchel remained at his feet, his phone still glowing with the boarding pass, his platinum card untouched on the tray table. The departure board above Gate 17 flashed, Flight 552 to San Francisco. Boarding complete in 20 minutes. Sarah stepped back, her hand hovering over her radio, her eyes locked on Marcus. Last chance, sir, she said, her voice cold. Move, or you're off this flight. Marcus's gaze held steady, a quiet storm brewing behind his calm exterior. He knew the eyes on him, the cameras rolling, the tweets spreading. This wasn't just about a seat anymore. It was about something far bigger. But for now he waited, his silence louder than any protest, as the cabin watched and the world began to listen. The air in the first-class cabin of Atlantic Airways Flight 5522 crackled with unease. A taut wire stretched to its breaking point. Marcus Chen sat resolute in seat 1A, his navy sweater a quiet contrast to the storm brewing around him. His platinum frequent flyer card gleamed untouched on the tray table, a symbol of loyalty dismissed as fraud. Sarah Mitchell, the flight attendant, stood over him, her tablet clutched like a weapon, her face a mask of indignation. Sir, I won't repeat myself, she said, her voice sharp enough to slice through the cabin's hum. Move to the economy or security will escort you off. The words landed like a gavel, but Marcus's gaze remained steady, his hands resting calmly on his khakis, betraying no hint of surrender. Passengers shifted in their seats, their eyes darting between Marcus and Sarah. The businessman in 2A, his sparkling water now forgotten, leaned forward, his voice dripping with unsolicited advice. Just take your real seat, buddy, he said, his tone patronizing. No need to cause trouble. The condescension hung heavy, a spark in a room doused with gasoline. Marcus's jaw tightened, a flicker of steel in his otherwise composed demeanor. In 2B, Thomas's phone trembled slightly as he live-streamed, his Twitter feed ablaze with outrage. He showed his boarding pass and a platinum card. They're treating him like a criminal. Atlantic discrimination, he typed, the post surging to 150 retweets in moments. The hashtag pulsed across the platform, a digital drumbeat amplifying the scene. Sarah's colleague Tom hovered nervously at her side, his lanky frame casting a shadow over the aisle. Sarah, maybe we should double-check the system, he whispered, his voice barely audible, but carrying a tremor of doubt. Sarah's head snapped toward him, her ponytail whipping like a flag in a storm. "There's no mix-up," she hissed, loud enough for the first-class cabin to hear. "He booked economy and thought he could sneak into first class. It happens all the time." The accusation was a blade, slicing through the air with deliberate precision. Passengers gasped softly, some exchanging glances, others burying their faces in their phones to avoid the confrontation. Marcus leaned forward slightly, his voice low but cutting. "Ma'am, I understand there might be confusion. Please check your system. I booked this seat a month ago. Paid in full." The cabin's fluorescent lights seemed to sharpen, casting harsh shadows on Sarah's face as she tapped her tablet with increasing frustration. Her frown deepened, her fingers hesitating as the screen refused to align with her narrative. "Our records show an economy ticket," she declared, her voice rising with conviction. "You're in the wrong seat, sir." Marcus's eyes locked onto hers, unflinching. He slid his phone across the tray table, the screen glowing with his digital boarding pass. "Seat 1A, first class, confirmed." "This says otherwise," he said, his tone calm but laced with an undeniable challenge. The businessman in 2A shook his head, muttering, "These mistakes happen when people aren't careful." The implication was clear, and it stung like salt in a wound. Dr. Elena in 3C could no longer stay silent. Her glasses glinted as she leaned forward, her voice steady but firm. "He's shown you his boarding pass twice," she said, her words slicing through the tension. "Why aren't you verifying it properly?" Sarah's face flushed, her eyes narrowing at the interruption. "Ma'am, this doesn't concern you," she snapped, her tone curt. "He's trying to scam an upgrade, and we're handling it." The word scam reverberated, a second blow that drew audible gasps from nearby passengers. Thomas's live stream surged to 800 viewers, comments flooding in. "This is blatant racism. She's not even looking at his proof." The departure board above gate 17 flashed red. "Flight 552 to San Francisco. Boarding complete in 15 minutes." Sarah's hand hovered over her radio, her resolve hardening. "I'm calling security," she announced, her voice cold and final. Marcus's expression didn't waver, but his fingers brushed the platinum card on the tray table, a silent reminder of the truth she refused to acknowledge. "That won't be necessary," he said, his voice a quiet anchor in the rising chaos. "Just check the system, and we can resolve this." But Sarah was already speaking into her radio, her words clipped. "Ground control, we need security at gate 17. Passenger refusing to comply with crew instructions." The cabin fell into a hushed anticipation, the only sounds the faint hum of the aircraft and the rapid tapping of Thomas's fingers on his phone. The businessman in 2A leaned back, his arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said, his voice loud enough to carry. Dr. Elena shot him a withering look, her phone now recording alongside Thomas's. "He's done nothing wrong," she countered, her voice rising with conviction. "You're all assuming he doesn't belong here without evidence." The tension was palpable, a living thing coiling around the cabin. Passengers in the back of first class craned their necks, their whispers forming a low chorus of speculation. Thomas's live stream hit 1,000 viewers, his latest tweet. "They're calling security on a man with a valid first-class ticket." Atlantic discrimination, retweeted 200 times. Sarah stepped back, her radio crackling with a response from ground control. Her eyes flicked to Marcus, a mix of defiance and unease in her gaze. "Security's on the way," she said, her voice betraying a hint of nerves. Marcus nodded slightly, his hand still resting on his khakis, his satchel unmoved at his feet. The platinum card and boarding pass lay before him, unshakable evidence in a sea of accusations. The cabin watched, breathless, as the departure board ticked down. 12 minutes to boarding complete. Outside, the tarmac shimmered under the midday sun, oblivious to the drama unfolding within. Marcus's silence was a force, a calm defiance that held the room captive, as the world beyond Gate 17 began to take notice. The first-class cabin of Atlantic Airways Flight 552 to San Francisco was a pressure cooker, its air thick with unspoken accusations and the weight of watching eyes. Marcus Chen sat unwavering in seat 1A, his navy sweater a quiet defiance against the storm swirling around him. His platinum frequent flyer card and boarding pass lay on the tray table, their truth ignored by Sarah Mitchell, the flight attendant whose radio now crackled with the promise of escalation. "Security's on the way," she declared, her voice a mix of triumph and unease, her blonde ponytail swaying as she stepped back. Marcus's gaze remained steady, his hands resting on his khakis, his worn leather satchel a silent sentinel at his feet. The departure board above Gate 17 blinked. Flight 5532. Boarding complete in 10 minutes. The cabin held its breath, a stage set for confrontation. Footsteps echoed from the jet bridge, deliberate and heavy. Two security officers emerged, their Navy uniforms stark against the cabin's muted tones. Lisa, a wiry woman with a no-nonsense air, led the way, her badge glinting under the fluorescent lights. Behind her, Jamal Carter, a broad-shouldered man with a calm demeanor, scanned the scene. Their arrival sent a ripple through the cabin. Passengers shifted, phones raised higher, capturing every moment. Thomas in 2B, his live stream now at 1,200 viewers, typed furiously, "Security just showed up. They're targeting a man with a valid first-class ticket." Atlantic discrimination. The hashtag surged, retweeted 250 times, a digital wildfire spreading beyond the terminal. Jamal stepped forward, his eyes taking in Marcus, calm, composed, unshaken. "Sir, can I see your boarding pass?" he asked, his tone professional but not unkind. Marcus nodded, handing over the paper pass with a steady hand. The bold print of 1A First Class was unmistakable. Jamal examined it carefully, then cross-checked it with Marcus's ID, his brow furrowing slightly as he processed the information. He turned to Sarah, holding up the pass. "This shows First Class, Seat 1A, he said, his voice even but carrying a hint of skepticism. Sarah's face flushed, her tablet clutched tighter. "It's got to be a glitch," she insisted, her voice rising. "These people know how to game the system." The phrase "these people" landed like a thunderclap, raw and unfiltered. Gasps erupted from the cabin. Dr. Elena in 3C froze, her phone still recording, her eyes wide with disbelief. The businessman in 2A shifted uncomfortably, his earlier smirk gone. Thomas's live stream exploded to 1,500 viewers, comments flooding in. "Did she just say that? This is blatant racism." Marcus's expression didn't change, but his eyes met Jamal's for a fleeting moment, a silent acknowledgement of the weight behind those words. Jamal's jaw tightened, his own understanding of that phrase etched in his features. He turned back to Sarah. "Ma'am, this boarding pass came from your system. How would it be fraudulent?" Sarah faltered, her confidence cracking. Well, it's obviously a mistake," she stammered, her gaze darting to her colleague Tom, who stood frozen. His nervous smile long vanished. The cabin's tension was a living thing, coiling tighter with each word. Lisa stepped closer, her voice clipped. "What's the issue here?" she asked, directing the question to Sarah but glancing at Marcus, assessing the man who sat so calmly amidst the chaos. Sarah straightened, regaining some of her bravado. "He's refusing to move to his assigned economy seat," she said, her tone accusing. "He's being disruptive." Marcus's voice cut through, calm but resonant. "I'm in my assigned seat, first class, 1A. I've provided my boarding pass, ID, and platinum card, 420,000 miles with Atlantic." He gestured to the tray table, where the evidence lay untouched. Lisa's eyes flicked to the documents, then back to Sarah. "Have you verified this in the system?" she asked, her tone sharp. Sarah's hesitation was palpable, her fingers hovering over her tablet. "I did," she lied, her voice betraying a tremor. "It shows economy." Jamal raised an eyebrow, holding up Marcus's boarding pass. "This says otherwise, and it matches his ID." The cabin buzzed with whispers, passengers leaning forward, their phones capturing every angle. Thomas's latest tweet: "Security confirms his ticket is legit, but they're still harassing him." Atlantic discrimination hit 300 retweets. Dr. Elena spoke up, her voice steady but laced with outrage. "He's shown every piece of proof. Why are you still questioning him?" Sarah's face reddened, her authority slipping. "Ma'am, please don't interfere," she snapped, but her voice lacked conviction. The businessman in 2A muttered, "Just moved a coach, man." But his words were drowned out by the growing murmur of the crowd. Ground Supervisor Karen Lee strode into the cabin, her badge glinting with authority, her purposeful steps silencing the whispers. A woman in her 50s, Karen carried the weight of 12 years with Atlantic Airways, her expression one of impatience. "What's causing the delay?" she demanded, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Jamal briefed her, handing over Marcus's boarding pass and ID. "His documents check out. First class 1A, he said, his tone neutral but firm. Karen's eyes narrowed as she examined the pass, her lips pursing as if the truth itself offended her. She looked at Marcus, then back at the documents, her theatrical scrutiny drawing every eye. "Mr. Chen," Karen said, her voice dripping with forced civility, "your documents seem fine, but you've been argumentative. Take an economy seat or you're off this flight." The ultimatum was a gauntlet thrown, and the cabin inhaled sharply. Thomas's live stream hit 1-800 viewers, his fingers trembling as he typed. "Supervisor just threatened to kick him off. This is unreal." Marcus's gaze met Karen's, unflinching. "I'd like to speak to your district manager," he said, his voice calm but carrying a quiet power. Karen scoffed, her arms crossing. "I'm the senior supervisor on duty. Take the seat or leave." The departure board ticked down. 8 minutes to boarding complete. The cabin was an amphitheater, every passenger a witness to a drama teetering on the edge. Marcus sat still, his satchel unmoved, his platinum card and boarding pass a silent rebuke to the accusations piling against him. Sarah's radio crackled faintly, ground control awaiting her next move. Jamal and Lisa exchanged a glance, their neutrality strained by the unfolding injustice. Dr. Elena's camera kept rolling, capturing the truth for a world now watching. Marcus's silence was a force, a calm before a storm that no one yet understood, as Gate 17 became the epicenter of something far greater than a seating dispute. The first-class cabin of Atlantic Airways, Flight 552 to San Francisco, was a crucible, its air charged with the weight of confrontation. Marcus Chen sat resolute in Seat 1A, his navy sweater and khakis, a quiet defiance against the accusations piling like storm clouds. Ground Supervisor Karen Lee stood before him, her badge glinting with authority, her ultimatum still ringing. Take the economy seat or leave. The departure board above Gate 17 flashed, Flight 552, boarding complete in 6 minutes. Security officers Jamal Carter and Lisa flanked the scene, their neutrality strained, while Sarah Mitchell, the flight attendant, clutched her tablet, her earlier bravado fraying. Phones glowed across the cabin, capturing every word, every glance. Thomas in 2B, his live stream surging to 1-800 viewers, typed furiously, "Supervisors threatening to kick him off for no reason. Atlantic discrimination." The hashtag roared across Twitter, a digital tempest gaining strength. Marcus's gaze met Karen's, unflinching, a calm anchor in the chaos. "I'd like to speak to your district manager," he repeated, his voice low but resonant, carrying the weight of a man who knew more than he let on. Karen's scoff was sharp, her arms crossing tighter. "I'm the senior supervisor on duty," she snapped, her tone final. "You've got 2 options, economy or the exit. Choose." The cabin inhaled, passengers leaning forward, their whispers a low hum of anticipation. Dr. Elena, in 3C, her phone still recording, shook her head, her eyes blazing with indignation. The businessman in 2A muttered, "Just go, man!" But his voice was drowned by the growing murmur of the crowd. Marcus's hand moved to his satchel, deliberate and unhurried. His phone buzzed faintly, a text flashing briefly on the screen before he silenced it. Board meeting rescheduled. Emergency session, room B. He slipped the device into his pocket, his expression unreadable. Then, with a fluid motion, he withdrew a sleek business card holder from his satchel, its leather polished to a subtle sheen. He opened it, selected a single card, and extended it to Karen. "You might want to see this," he said, his voice steady, a quiet thunder rolling beneath the words. Karen hesitated, her confidence flickering, then took the card. Her eyes scanned it, and the color drained from her face, her hands trembling slightly as she read aloud, her voice faltering. "Marcus Chen, CEO, Chen Enterprises." A gasp rippled through the cabin, sharp and collective, as if the air itself had been struck. Passengers pressed closer, craning to see. Dr. Elena leaned forward, reading over Karen's shoulder, her glasses slipping slightly as she whispered, "Chen Enterprises? They're worth billions." Thomas's live stream exploded to 2,500 viewers, his fingers flying. "He's a CEO. Atlantic is screwed. Atlantic discrimination." The tweet surged to 400 retweets, the hashtag now trending nationwide. Sarah's tablet slipped an inch in her grip, her earlier accusations crumbling under the weight of this revelation. Jamal and Lisa exchanged a glance, their neutrality giving way to quiet shock. Even the businessman in 2A sat back, his smirk replaced by wide-eyed disbelief. Karen stared at the card, her lips parting but no words coming. Marcus leaned back slightly, his hands resting on his khakis, his platinum frequent flyer card and boarding pass still untouched on the tray table. "In about 2 minutes," he said, his voice calm but laced with steel, "you're going to receive a call from your headquarters. I suggest you answer it." The words landed like a guillotine, precise and devastating. Karen's eyes flicked to Marcus, then back to the card, her authority unraveling thread by thread. The cabin was a theater, every passenger a witness to a drama shifting in real time. Thomas's live stream comments flooded in. "This is unreal. He's turning the tables." Sarah stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sir, we didn't know," she stammered, her earlier bravado gone. Marcus's gaze shifted to her, measured but unyielding. "You didn't ask," he said simply, the truth a blade that cut deeper than any shout. Dr. Elena's camera captured the moment, her lens steady as she whispered to the passenger beside her. "This is historic." The departure board ticked down. 4 minutes to boarding complete. The cabin's fluorescent lights seemed to pulse, casting stark shadows on Karen's pale face, her hand still clutching the business card as if it might burn her. Karen's radio crackled, shattering the silence. "Supervisor Lee, contact CEO Laura Bennett immediately. Priority 1. The voice was urgent, unmistakable. Marcus nodded slightly, his eyes never leaving Karen's. "Right on time," he said, his voice a quiet promise of consequences yet to unfold. The cabin erupted in whispers, passengers exchanging glances, their phones buzzing with notifications. Thomas's live stream hit 3,000 viewers. His latest tweet, "CEO just called. This guy owns the airline." Atlantic discrimination, retweeted 500 times. The hashtag was a wildfire, consuming social media feeds across the globe. Karen's hands trembled as she gripped her radio, her authority crumbling under the weight of Marcus's identity. Jamal stepped back, his expression a mix of respect and disbelief, while Lisa's eyes narrowed, reassessing the man in seat 1A. Sarah's face was ashen, her tablet now a useless prop in a drama she no longer controlled. Dr. Elena leaned forward, her voice low but urgent. "You owe him an apology," she said to Karen, her words a challenge. The businessman in 2A sank into his seat, his earlier arrogance buried under the truth. Marcus sat still, his satchel unmoved, his calm a force that held the cabin captive. The departure board flashed, 2 minutes to boarding complete. The tarmac outside shimmered, oblivious to the seismic shift within Gate 17. Marcus's silence was a beacon, drawing every eye, every camera, every tweet. The world was watching, and the stage was set for a reckoning. Karen's radio crackled again, the voice from headquarters growing insistent. She looked at Marcus, the business card still in her hand, and for the first time, doubt flickered in her eyes. The cabin waited, breathless, as the truth began to reshape reality, one revelation at a time. The first-class cabin of Atlantic Airways Flight 5052 to San Francisco was a crucible of tension, its air electric with the aftershock of Marcus Chen's revelation. In seat 1A, Marcus sat, his navy sweater and khakis, a stark contrast to the seismic shift he just unleashed. The business card identifying him as CEO of Chen Enterprises, owners of a 25% stake in Atlantic Airways, still trembled in Ground Supervisor Karen Lee's hand. Her radio had crackled with an urgent summons from CEO Laura Bennett, and the departure board above Gate 17 blinked. Flight 552 delayed. Passengers pressed closer, phones aloft, capturing the drama. Thomas in 2B, his live stream soaring to threes and viewers, typed, CEO just dropped a bombshell. He owns part of the airline. Drikizrar Atlantic discrimination. The hashtag trended globally, retweeted 600 times, a digital maelstrom amplifying the standoff. Karen's face was pale, her authority unraveling like threadbare cloth. Sarah Mitchell, the flight attendant who'd sparked the confrontation, stood frozen, her tablet a useless shield. Security officers Jamal Carter and Lisa watched, their neutrality strained by the unfolding truth. Marcus's voice broke the silence, calm but commanding. "You should take that call, Ms. Lee," he said, gesturing to Karen's radio, his eyes steady as steel. Karen hesitated, then pressed the button, her voice unsteady. "This is Supervisor Lee." The response was immediate, Laura Bennett's voice sharp through the static. "Karen, is Marcus Chen with you? Put him on, now." The cabin inhaled, a collective breath held as Marcus stood, his movements deliberate. He pulled his phone from his pocket, connecting it to a gate monitor with a swift tap, sharing his screen with Atlantic's Chicago boardroom. Laura Bennett appeared on the display, her face taut, surrounded by 8 board members in a mahogany-lined room. "Marcus, what's happening at Gate 17?" she asked, her voice a mix of urgency and dread. Marcus's gaze swept the cabin, taking in the passengers, the cameras, and the weight of the moment. "Laura, I was denied my paid first-class seat, accused of fraud, and threatened with removal due to racial bias," he said, his tone even but cutting. "It's trending online. Your stock is down 1.8% in the last 30 minutes. A murmur rippled through the cabin, passengers exchanging stunned glances. Dr. Elena in 3C, her phone still recording, whispered, "He's not just fighting for himself." Thomas's live stream hit 4,000 viewers, comments flooding in. "This is bigger than one flight. He's exposing the whole system." Laura's eyes widened on the monitor, her composure cracking. "This is unacceptable," she said, her voice tight. "What do you need?" Marcus's expression hardened, his satchel open at his feet, his platinum frequent flyer card and boarding pass still untouched on the tray table. He stepped closer to the monitor, his presence commanding the room. "This isn't about me," he said, his voice rising with purpose. "It's about every passenger who's faced discrimination and lacked the platform to fight back." He raised a hand, counting off his demands with deliberate precision. "First, terminate Sarah Mitchell and Captain David Harper within 24 hours. Their actions triggered this crisis." Sarah gasped, her tablet slipping from her hands, clattering to the floor. The businessman in 2A sank deeper into his seat, his earlier arrogance buried. "Second, implement mandatory bias training for all customer-facing staff within 30 days. Marcus continued, his voice unwavering. "Third, establish an anonymous reporting system for discrimination incidents managed by a third party within 72 hours. The cabin buzzed, passengers nodding, some wiping away tears. Thomas's latest tweet, "He's demanding justice now." Atlantic discrimination surged to 800 retweets. "Fourth," Marcus said, his eyes locking with Laura's on the screen, "create a $750,000 fund for diversity and inclusion initiatives, effective immediately." A collective gasp rose, the scale of the demand sinking in. Dr. Elena whispered to the passenger beside her, "He's rewriting the airline's future." Marcus's final demand was a blade, sharp and unrelenting. Fifth, issue a public apology acknowledging systemic failures in passenger treatment within 48 hours. Laura's face was grim, her board members scribbling notes furiously. "Marcus, a public apology could expose us to legal liability," she said, her voice strained. Marcus's response was immediate. "Your liability is already exposed, Laura. There are 4,000 people watching this live. Your choice is between transparency and a PR disaster." The cabin erupted in applause, passengers clapping, some standing. Thomas's live stream hit 5,000 viewers, comments exploding. "This man is a legend. Atlantic's done for." Karen's radio crackled, forgotten in her trembling hand. Sarah's eyes brimmed with tears, her career unraveling before her. Jamal and Lisa stepped back, Their respect for Marcus palpable. Marcus opened his satchel, pulling out a document, its pages crisp and official. "There's one more thing you should know," he said, holding it up for the camera. "Last year, my Chen Foundation donated $750,000 anonymously to Atlantic for diversity training. Today I saw why it failed." The revelation was a thunderclap, silencing the cabin. Sarah's gasp was audible, her hands covering her mouth. Karen's face went ashen, the business card still clutched in her fingers. Laura's voice crackled through the monitor. "Marcus, we had no idea," she said, her tone pleading. Marcus's gaze was unrelenting. "That's the point, Laura. Treatment shouldn't depend on who I am. It should be equal for every passenger." He closed the document, his voice softening but firm. "Chen Enterprises books $1.5 million in flights annually with Atlantic. We're reviewing all vendor relationships for alignment with our values." Laura nodded, her face resolute. "We accept your conditions, Marcus. We'll act within 72 hours. The cabin roared, passengers cheering, some wiping tears. Dr. Elena lowered her phone, her voice thick with emotion. "This is justice." Thomas's live stream comments were a torrent of celebration emojis. Marcus nodded to Karen, his voice calm. "Shall we discuss solutions privately? You'll want to limit exposure." Karen, shell-shocked, could only nod. The departure board flickered. Flight 5952, delayed 20 minutes. The cabin was an arena. Marcus its unyielding champion, as Gate 17 became the epicenter of a reckoning that would echo far beyond the tarmac. The dust of confrontation had barely settled at Gate 17, but the ripples of Marcus Chen's stand on Atlantic Airways Flight 552 were already reshaping the world beyond the tarmac. In his San Francisco office, 71 hours after the incident, Marcus sat at a mahogany desk, the city's skyline a glittering backdrop through floor-to-ceiling windows. His navy sweater had been replaced by a tailored blazer, but the worn leather satchel from that fateful flight rested nearby, a reminder of the battle won. Stacks of documents, meticulously arranged by his assistant Priya Patel, detailed Atlantic Airways' rapid response to his demands. The air was thick with purpose, the weight of change tangible. Thomas, the passenger whose live stream had amplified the drama, now had 50,000 Twitter followers. His latest post, "Atlantic scrambling to fix this. Dignity in travel." Retweeted 200 times, a beacon for a movement taking root. Marcus flipped through the top document. Termination letters for Sarah Mitchell and Captain David Harper, executed within 24 hours as he demanded. Sarah, the flight attendant who'd dismissed his first-class ticket, and Harper, the captain who'd called security without checking facts, were dismissed with cause. Their personnel files now marked with the weight of their misjudgment. Priya, her tablet glowing with updates, leaned forward. "Sarah's enrolled in bias training, hoping to rebuild," she reported, her voice a mix of professionalism and awe. "Harper's credentials are under review by the FAA." Marcus nodded, his expression unreadable, but his eyes sharp, scanning the next page. A report on new training materials rolled out to 12,000 Atlantic employees. The program, launched at 6 a.m. that morning, mandated 8 hours of bias recognition for every staff member within 30 days. The office hummed with quiet efficiency, Priya's fingers tapping as she pulled up a dashboard on her tablet. "The anonymous reporting system went live at dawn," she said, sharing the screen. 3 complaints had already been logged, one from a passenger in Denver, another from a gate agent in Miami, both alleging discriminatory treatment. A third-party firm was investigating, with findings due within 48 hours, a stark contrast to the months-long delays of the past. Marcus leaned back, his fingers brushing the satchel. "They're moving fast," he said, his voice low but resonant, a man who'd forced a corporate giant to sprint. Outside, San Francisco's fog curled around the bay, but inside, clarity reigned. A news alert flashed on Marcus's phone. Atlantic Airways stock rebounds 2.9% after swift discrimination response. The market had rewarded decisiveness, a sharp recovery from the 1.8% drop during the Gate 17 standoff. That morning, CEO Laura Bennett had appeared on CNN, her face somber but resolute, announcing the Travel with Respect initiative. "Mr. Chen's experience was unacceptable," she'd said, staring into the camera, "but his demands showed us how to turn failure into progress." The interview, viewed 900,000 times in 6 hours, had shifted the narrative from crisis to redemption. Marcus's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "They're learning," he said to Priya, who nodded, her eyes gleaming with pride. The next document detailed the $750,000 diversity fund established as Marcus had mandated, with initial grants already allocated to community organizations fighting transportation inequality. 6 airlines, Delta, United, and 4 regional carriers, had requested access to Atlantic's new training program, which Marcus Chen's foundation was licensing through a nonprofit, proceeds funding scholarships for underrepresented youth. Priya's tablet chimed with an email from Laura Bennett. "First quarterly report ready for your review, Mr. Chen." Marcus opened it, scanning metrics. Discrimination complaints down 60% in 3 days. Customer satisfaction up 15%. "They're not just complying," he said, his voice a quiet thunder. "They're rebuilding trust." A soft knock interrupted them. A courier delivered a letter from Maria Gomez, the Latina passenger inspired by Thomas's livestream. Her $2 million settlement against a rival airline had funded training for 50,000 workers, and she'd written to thank Marcus. "Your stand gave me the courage to fight." Marcus added the letter to a growing file, each story a spark in the fire of change. His phone buzzed again, this time with a call from Dr. Elena, the passenger from 3C. "Mr. Chen," she said, her voice warm, "your case inspired my hospital to adopt an anonymous bias reporting system. We're calling it the Chen Protocol." Marcus's eyes softened. "That's the real victory, Dr. Elena," he replied. "One incident, one system changed." The office windows reflected the city's dusk, a canvas of orange and gray. Priya pulled up a final report. Atlantic's ground supervisor, Karen Lee, had been demoted to training coordinator, now undergoing mandatory sensitivity counseling. Her role in escalating the crisis had cost her authority, but Marcus had insisted on retraining over termination, a nod to redemption over punishment. "She's learning too," Priya noted, and Marcus nodded, his gaze distant but resolute. The Chen Foundation's inbox swelled with emails, passengers sharing their own stories, each a plea for justice, each a thread in a tapestry of reform. Marcus stood, walking to the window, the bay's lights twinkling like stars. The incident at Gate 17 was no longer just a moment. It was a catalyst. Thomas's livestream, now archived, had been viewed 2 million times, inspiring copycat initiatives across industries. Atlantic's stock chart, displayed on Priya's tablet, showed stability, but the true measure was in the metrics. 12 employees had proactively reported bias incidents, a sign the culture was shifting. Marcus's phone chimed with a text from Laura. "Thank you for pushing us to be better." He didn't reply, his focus on the horizon, where the promise of dignity for every traveler felt within reach. The auditorium of the 2027 Transportation Equity Conference in Atlanta thrummed with anticipation, a sea of 1,000 faces, activists, airline executives, and civil rights lawyers, fixed on the stage. Marcus Chen stood at the podium, his navy suit a nod to the sweater he'd worn 2 years ago on Atlantic Airways Flight 512, when a single act of discrimination ignited a movement. Behind him, a screen displayed a graph. Airline discrimination complaints down 68% since 2025. The air was charged, not with tension, but with the weight of transformation. Outside, Atlanta's skyline gleamed, a city of resilience, while inside, Marcus's voice carried the promise of a new era. Thomas, now a known activist, sat in the front row, his phone streaming to 200,000 viewers, his Twitter handle still buzzing with the Nation's Atlantic discrimination, a hashtag that had become a beacon for change. Marcus clicked to his first slide, the graph a testament to systemic reform. 2 years ago, I was told to leave my first-class seat because of how I looked, he began, his voice steady, resonant, cutting through the auditorium's hush. Today, we've reshaped an industry, not with anger, but with accountability. The crowd leaned forward, some nodding, others wiping tears. Among them was Sarah Mitchell, the former flight attendant whose words had sparked the crisis. Now a diversity consultant, she sat in the third row, her notepad filled with lessons learned from her own reckoning. Her presence was a quiet miracle, a symbol of redemption in a story that could have ended in bitterness. The screen shifted to a photo of Maria Gomez, a young Latina who'd watched Thomas's live stream that day. Inspired by Marcus, she'd won a $2 million settlement against a rival airline, funding bias training for 50,000 workers. Maria's case, Marcus said, his eyes sweeping the room, proved you don't need to be a CEO to demand justice. You need courage and evidence. The crowd murmured, a ripple of awe. Maria, seated near Thomas, blushed as cameras turned her way. Her story had sparked a wave of lawsuits, each a pebble in the pond of change. Marcus Chen Foundation, now a powerhouse for transportation equality, had supported 67 such cases, from bus lines to rideshare services, each victory a brick in a new foundation. He clicked to another slide. The Atlantic Rules, federal regulations named for the incident that forced airlines to publicly report discrimination complaints. These rules, Marcus said, his voice rising, weren't born in boardrooms. They came from Gate 17, from passengers like you who recorded, shared, and refused to stay silent. The auditorium erupted in applause, the sound a rolling thunder. Thomas's live stream comments exploded. This man changed the game. Ishak's dignity in travel. The hashtag, a successor to Arshan, Atlantic discrimination, had been used 50,000 times, spawning initiatives at Amtrak, Greyhound, and 3 major hotel chains. Marcus's gaze softened, taking in the crowd. Change starts with one documented injustice, he said, his words a call to arms. Sarah Mitchell stood during the Q&A, her voice trembling but clear. Mr. Chen, I'm Sarah Mitchell from Flight 552, she said, the auditorium falling silent. A murmur followed. Her name was infamous, the spark of the fire. I want to apologize again, publicly, and thank you. Your response changed my life. I've spent 2 years learning to undo my biases, helping others avoid my mistakes. The crowd held its breath, then erupted in applause, a wave of grace washing over the room. Marcus smiled, his voice warm. Sarah, your courage to grow is what this movement needs. Thank you for being here. The moment was electric, a testament to transformation, not just of systems, but of hearts. Marcus clicked to his final slide, a photo of Angela Thompson, the young MBA graduate whose letter had moved him. Her case against United Airlines had funded training for 47,000 employees, a ripple that became a tide. Angela showed us that ordinary people can shift industries, he said, his voice thick with pride. Angela stepped onto the stage, her presence drawing a standing ovation. She hugged Marcus, whispering, "Thank you for giving us a voice." The live stream hit 250,000 viewers, and comments flooded with stories of discrimination turned into action. Marcus turned to the camera, his eyes piercing. Every one of you has a story. Document it, share it, demand accountability. The screen displayed the Transportation Equality Foundation's website, its tools for reporting injustice gleaming like weapons of change. This isn't my victory, Marcus said, his voice a quiet storm. It's ours. From Gate 17 to this stage, we've built a world where dignity isn't a privilege. It's a right. The crowd rose, their applause a 3-minute roar, shaking the auditorium's walls. Thomas's live stream comments were a torrent of commitments. I'm reporting my airline's bias today, sharing this with my union. Marcus stepped back, his suit catching the stage lights. His calm presence a reminder of the man who'd sat in seat 1A, refusing to move. Outside, Atlanta's dusk painted the sky in hues of fire, a fitting backdrop for a movement that had ignited and endured. Sarah left the auditorium, her notepad clutched tight, her new mission clear. Maria and Angela joined activists in the lobby, planning the next wave of reforms. The Chen Foundation's inbox swelled with letters, each a story of injustice seeking justice. Marcus's phone buzzed with a call from Transportation Secretary Michael Rodriguez, no relation to the fired captain. Your work gave us the momentum for nationwide regulations, he said. 6 airlines adopted your protocols voluntarily. Marcus nodded, gazing at the city skyline, its lights a constellation of possibility. The legacy of Flight 552 wasn't in the headlines or the stock rebounds, but in the quiet moments. A black teenager boarding a flight without fear, a Latina grandmother treated with respect. A world where Gate 17's shame became a catalyst for dignity. Marcus's final words echoed in the live stream, now archived for millions. Change isn't a moment, it's a system. Build it. The auditorium emptied, but the fire remained, carried by those who'd witnessed a CEO turn a single seat into a revolution. What an incredible journey Marcus Chen took us on, from a single act of defiance in Seat 1A to a movement that reshaped an industry. Now we want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. How did this story inspire you? Have you faced or witnessed injustice that needs a voice? Your thoughts fuel this fight for dignity. A huge thank you for joining us, for sharing this story, and for being part of the change. Subscribe to catch our next video, where we'll uncover more stories that spark revolution. Until then, keep documenting, keep demanding justice, and we'll see you soon.